Um, yeah, that's my favorite word, I still get nervous at these things. My normal audience size is 1. When you're a mental health therapist, you usually only talk to one person at a time. Thank you. For those of you who find value in what you're going to learn today, there is some advanced training that's available, and I highly recommend it, and Karen is one of our most skilled trainers. And if you want to learn how to really apply the things you're learning to your life and to be able to pass it on to those who you care about, she's one of the many that are very good at teaching these principles in a very detailed way. So our goals today are to give you the background, the philosophies, the core elements of what we train, what we teach, so that you can have them for yourselves. And we're going to put a special effort in today, by the time we're done, to give you some really basic tools, some basic resources that you can use at home with your own children, with yourself, with if you're an ecclesiastical leader, if you are in a position where you're a young men's leader or young women's or something like that, to really fine-tune the self-mastery that you want the youth around you to experience. Others are using it in groups, have all of their youth that they work with running through this training. Homeschool organizations are using this quite a bit with their youth. And so in the past, we've focused primarily on the theoretical elements of what we do, and today we really want to boil it down to some practical tools that you can use at home, and then you can decide if you want more extensive training after what you experienced today. Okay, so that's what we're planning to do today. You'll be hearing from more than just me today. Alrighty, background on where all this comes from. I'm the third of 9 boys. I was raised in Idaho. I came to Utah for high school, went to Davis High. In high school, I was a nerd, an athlete, and a musician. After that, I went on to serve a mission, do the 2-year missionary thing in Detroit, where I learned how to become black and play basketball. We actually wore black tennis shoes because we played more basketball than we knocked on doors, as our way of proselyting. Anyway, came back, went to the University of Utah for both bachelor's and master's degrees, got married in between 21 years ago. I have 2 kids, a boy and a girl, both adopted. I used to be full-time at LDS Family Services, and now I run the agency Life Changing Services full-time. There's some background. Now, I had an interesting experience while I was in Detroit. I started to get some questions from people that I wasn't ready for, that they didn't prepare me for in the Missionary Training Center. And they asked Harker, which is Elder Harker, if you say it in Utah. Harker, can you explain to us what this stuff has to do with reality? And I'm all, I don't know. I was raised and grown up on the Mormon conveyor belt. Everybody know what that means? Deacon, teacher, priest, jumping the MTC with lots of enthusiasm but no intelligence to back it up. And when it came to practical application of these principles, I, had a pretty easy life for the most part and had no real reason to need the information. And so, just for the sake of trying to be good as a missionary, I tried really hard to learn how the principles applied to them. I got home, tried to dive into the real world experience. I was surprised that when you try to be an adult, it's a little harder than trying to be a teenager. And I got roughed up a little bit. Life wasn't as easy as I thought. Relationships were not as easy as I thought they would be. And my own flaws, my own human experience was getting in the way. And so I remembered that question again. What do these principles have to do with real life issues? And so the work I've been doing for 25 years now is to bridge the stuff that you learn on Sundays with some cutting-edge core scientific principles so that you can now have the power of both of them connected at the same time instead of having them separated as they traditionally are. And so to try to get good at it, I read about every book you could find. I wasn't much of a reader before then. I read every self-help book that was on the top 20 list. I read every relationships book that was on the top 20 list and tried to cram as much as I could in my head. I chose to go to the University of Utah for two reasons. One, they gave me a good scholarship, and two, I wanted a open-minded approach to psychology, not like those people down at BYU. Okay? And so, of course, it's a stereotype. But that was my goal. I really wanted to come at it from another angle, not the enmeshed thinking that is sometimes we're accused of here in Utah. And so I studied and studied and studied. One of the first things that I discovered that was a surprise to me is that God is a good psychologist. It's one of those duh concepts, right? But you don't find any textbook chapters that'll discuss that. And so, and as I was starting to take classes, they says, now, we want you to take everything that affects the human mind into consideration, all the factors. And I'm all, great, that's how I want to do this. So 6 months, a year into it, I raised my hand. And so when we start talking about how spiritual things affect human psychology, and they said, oh, except for that, because that's not real, that's just something people make up in their heads. Oh, okay. You might have been able to convince me of that before I was in Detroit, but after some dozens of experience I experienced there, I knew that my psychology was affected by spiritual things, and I assumed other people's psychology was affected by spiritual things as well. So if I was going to learn how that all worked, I was going to have to study it myself. So one of the things I've done to make sure what I teach people is accurate is I've worked to average at least one general conference talk per day for 25 years now. So that's where a big core element of the information I'll be giving you today comes from. Alrighty. So, it was during that time also that I decided, you know what? I would like to marry a perfect woman. And I assumed that she would like to marry a perfect man. So I scheduled myself to become perfect by age 25. Now, about everything I'd done before wasn't too hard. Might as well do that. Why wait till you're 100 when you can be perfect at age 25 and coast for 75 years? Okay? Naivety, arrogance, enthusiasm kind of defined my character then and sometimes even now. I started studied a concept called cognitive restructuring, which is basically computer programming for the brain, and just find a problem, fix it, find a problem, fix it, find a problem, fix it, find a problem, fix it. I even had a chart on my wall that showed my progression. It was really cool. My mom loved it. She says, that's so cute. 23-year-old, I'm totally cute. Give me a break. Okay? So, everything was going according to plan. I was on schedule. I was going to be perfect by age 25. All right? Until I started hitting some glitches. Okay? I would set up these beautiful brain systems in my head, okay? Some lovely pieces of machinery, like a man with his car in his garage. And I'd bring it out of the garage and be driving down the street and I'm all, what just happened? Push it back in the garage, do some more brain remodeling, try to fix what was going wrong, kick it into gear again, rolling, crash and burn again. Now what do you do with a car that keeps breaking down on you? Push it over a ditch or something like that? That's what I want to do with my brain, okay? And I want to tie this into what Karen was talking about with her son, where, you know what, you got your act together in so many ways. You see, I don't work with basement dwellers, okay? I work with the best of the best. I work with phenomenal piano players. I work with athletes. I work with the presidents of the seminary. I work with men who are in bishoprics. I work with men who are in elders' quorum presidency. I don't work with the bottom of the barrel. These are the guys that are the best of the best of the best, and their wives that are dealing with things, and their mothers, okay? And so the experience of being someone who has their act together in so many ways, but except for that one thing. Except for that one thing. All right? And it can drive you nuts. I can't tell you how many times I'm in an intake session with a young man, and their parents, I always have the parents brag about the kid in the intake session. The parents just, he's the they just go off. The kid's all, And as soon as the parents leave the room for a few minutes, they burst into tears. And they go, nobody gets it. Nobody understands. Nobody knows how horrible this is. Okay? And so, having my own version of those experiences, it suddenly occurred to me that I am in the field of psychology. Why don't I just study it? I could just study. Why do smart people do stupid things? I don't really care to watch or to study why stupid people do stupid things. That's what YouTube is for. Okay? Hey, catapult me over the house into the swimming pool. Oh, you missed. Let's try it again with my little brother. Okay? It's not very interesting to study why stupid people do stupid things, so my research was on why do smart people do stupid things. It was during that time that I found out that Satan is a good psychologist. Another concept that's not taught in textbooks. 7,000 years of perfecting the art of messing with the human mind. Now, I remember sitting in church settings, and you hear lots of vague warnings. Be careful, Satan will mess with you. Be cautious, he's going to try to attack you. Okay, that's all fine and dandy, but I didn't understand the mechanics of that. So exactly what is he going to do? Exactly what technique is he going to do? How is he going to attack me? What form does it come in? All of those things were a mystery to me. I didn't understand them. So as I studied it, I went back in time a little bit and let's look at what's going on before Adam and Eve. Anybody know what's going on before Adam and Eve that involved the dark side? I'll become conversational now, and you have name badges so I can actually call you by name. What's going on before Adam and Eve? War in heaven. Okay, we have this entity, this guy, who finds himself in a position where he's the leader of a very large portion of that army, fighting against the other side. And so it occurred to me that not only is he a skilled psychologist, but perhaps he's also a skilled military strategist. That's a little uncomfortable of a concept. And so, if you were the leader of a large army versus another large army, who would you kill first? Dave?
Their leader.
Why?
So they can't organize, can't they?
So would it surprise us if this 7,000-year-old genius decided to target leaders? And what if he could figure out who the leaders were going to be while they were still children? Anybody know of any stories where there was an attempt on the life of children who were going to become leaders in their older age? Who comes to mind? Who?
John Taylor.
John Taylor. Who else? Joe Smith. We also have Christ himself. And who's the guy with the pyramids? Thank you. Moses. Okay. Now, bear with me. I play several roles in the community. I am a healer. I'm a trainer. But I also play another strange role. I'm a scout. Not a Boy Scout, but a military scout. One of my jobs is to study the enemy in great detail so you don't have to. I sit on the edge of that dark territory, watching for his techniques with the hope of coming back and sharing with you what he plans and what he's doing. Part of that responsibility is I study his personality and his feelings about things. So can you imagine Satan's response when Moses and Christ slipped through his fingers? Maybe that's when swear words were invented. So he gives up, right? No. So now I see him pacing back and forth. He's going, okay, I couldn't kill them when they were children. I'll kill them when they're older. So he arranges for Christ to be killed. He arranges for Joe Smith to be killed. And he wins. Yes? Can you imagine his emotional response 3 days later when Christ came back? Okay? A little agitation, a little frustration, some swearing, and possibly kicking of sheep. Okay? Highly frustrated. So, of course, he gives up, yes? There's 2 chairs over here. Alrighty. Now, time starts to proceed on. Things keep moving forward. Perhaps you've heard the rumors that in the final days there's going to be a wave of the noble and great ones, that there's going to be spirits that were held for the final days that are better than we've ever experienced, leaders by numbers, okay? And so this probably intimidates the dark side, right? And so he gets overwhelmed and gives up, yes? So then he ponders, I can't kill them when they're children. I even thought about that. How do you get the modern political leader to arrange for babies to be killed in mass? I was thinking, could he do that to Obama? Anyway, I don't have a lot of political information, but you have to cut that part out, okay, Lisa? Okay. I can't kill them when they're children. I can't kill them when they're older. How am I going to wipe out the leaders of the final generation? What's the strategy that'll do that? I see him pacing back and forth until he discovers the concept of addiction. Okay? Perhaps many of you have seen it, whether it's your spouse, whether it's one of your children. You see them, as Karen described, you see them on the path of amazingness. You see them on this journey to greatness, and then something starts to go wrong. Something happens to them. Something starts to mess with their heads, and you can't quite put your finger on it. As a mom, you sense it really early going, something's weird here. Something, the Shakespearean phrase, something wicked this way comes. I don't know what's going on, but something's wrong here. And that starts to freak you out. And so Satan has learned that if you can turn a youth into an addict, then his leadership skills, his confidence skills will fall apart. And so the more I've studied it, the more I've analyzed what's going on, not only in each individual's lives, but across the board, is Satan is so afraid of these leaders. He's so afraid of them that he has to come up with some sneaky psychological technique to convince them that they actually aren't leaders. You see, if I was a deviant person, I even studied deviant military psychology like Hitler and stuff like that, if I could pinpoint the leaders of the other side and put them in barracks and every day point out to them what's wrong with them, point out to them why they're broken, point out to them all the mistakes they make, if they get to age 18 years old and they are convinced that by identity there's something seriously wrong with me, what will that do to their leadership confidence for the next 80 years? You don't have to put much work into slowing them down because they'll slow down themselves. And so that's why I've targeted this adolescent group. The resources are available for other ages, but to make sure they can win this war by the time they're 18, 19 years old is my primary focus so that they can continue to learn for the rest of their lives. All right, I hope that helps you understand why the dark side is approaching it this way and that he's not attacking the broken ones, but the warriors, the heroes. Okay? Now let's talk about technique, satanic technique. One of the things that concerns me sometimes when I'm in church-type settings and people are describing satanic attacks on people, the teacher will ask, so who would like to share the most recent temptation they received from Satan?
Don't come this morning.
What's that?
Not to come this morning.
Don't come this morning. There's one right there, okay? Now, a lot of the times when they're talking, I still hear people describing the ones that are kind of like as sophisticated as the way the British fought the Revolutionary War, with bright red coats, standing in straight lines, wondering why they have bullets in their forehead. Okay, who came up with that fighting strategy? Napoleon? Okay. So I'll ask a teenager, have you ever had that temptation? Dude, you should slap your mom. And they pause for a second so you can see that they actually have. And they go, no. And they go, okay, no, that's a stupid one. You don't slap your mom. There's too many consequences of that. So that's an easy one to win. Okay? You should cheat on this test. You should start a fight with your dad. You could win this time. Okay? And you go, no, those are really dumb temptations. Okay? I'm sure all of you have had some ridiculous temptations. They're really easy to catch. And you go, no, parents, beat the child. Am I the only one who's ever heard that temptation? It really will make things better. And I go, no, okay. Sometimes it takes me longer than that. So let's move forward in time to more of a Vietnam style of fighting. Anybody got a Vietnam student or experience? What's it all about? What's the fighting style in Vietnam?
Guerrilla warfare.
And what's that all about, guerrilla warfare?
It means high entry, deceptive, setting traps, approaching it any way you can to take advantage of the enemy.
Thank you. It's lots of sneakiness, right?
Any way but a frontal attack.
Anything but a frontal attack. As you describe that, could those not be the exact terms used to describe a satanic attack? Okay, so let's give an example of one of those. Let's say, what's your name?
Dallin.
Dallin, okay. How old are you, Dallin?
21.
Ooh, perfect age, okay. Dallin, let's say that you just finished boot camp back in 1969, 70, and you are like the man of your troop, okay? So obviously you became the leader, right? Naturally, okay. And so they fly you and your guys over to Vietnam and tip the helicopter sideways and dump you out because they're not going to stick around. They're fly off really fast. But you're not afraid, right? You're the man. Anyway, So before your bags can even be unpacked and your guys, the captain who's been there for a while runs up to you with his helmet on crooked and he's all haggard. Ah! You know, dude. Okay? And you go, and he says, hey, take your men, drop your stuff. See that mountain over there? Take your men, go get it. Yes, sir. So you got your flamethrower in one hand, your machine gun in the other hand. And you're just blazing a trail and your guys are right behind you. You are almost there to that mountain. When the enemy steps it up a notch and scares you down into a bunker. So now him and his men are in a bunker and then trying to decide what to do when your radio crackles. Sounds like there's some guy from Texas on the other line. Hey, soldier, looks like you're in a bad way. Really? Are you going to help me out here or make fun of me? Oh, yeah. If you just take your men and go here, you'll be just fine. Okay? Thank you. So you start following his instructions. You're halfway out. The enemy jumps out of the bushes, kills all your men, and right before their leader slits your throat, he shows you the American radio he stole the other day and talks to you as if he's from Texas. Is that fair? Interesting question, right? Is that fair? What's your response to that, Dallin? Anyone?
Depends on what side you're on.
Yeah, it's fair, we're doing
All's
it.
fair in war.
What's that?
All's fair in war.
Can you imagine throwing a yellow flag? Hey, come on, you can't do that. He says, oh, my bad, sorry, and pulls back, right? You see, this gives you an example of Satan's personality, Satan's style. He doesn't really care about whether it's fair or not. In fact, if you've been trying to study psychology for any time now, whether you're a layman or not, you have heard the concept called negative self-talk. Who's heard of that concept, negative self-talk? Okay? I would like to propose to you that there's no such thing. There's no such thing as negative self-talk. What if, like with this radio story, what if Satan figured out how to talk to you in your own voice in your head? In your own voice in your head. Is that fair?
To him.
No.
And so one of the things that we do when we train people is we train them to use the spirit of discernment to recognize the voice in the other line. Since I started teaching this, someone told me about how in the war, I'm not sure which one it was, where Morse code was invented and was used, that in order to keep from being tricked by someone intercepting the notes and then sending different notes, they had someone who memorized the cadences of the different operators, and they could almost feel or sense if a different person was running the ticker. Okay? That kind of sensitivity is required if you're going to know what's going on in your own head. So we train people, we train youth, we train people to have an extremely high sensitivity towards what's going on inside of their head. Okay? That's one of the satanic attack methods. That's a scary idea, right? Scary idea that someone would be talking inside your head. What if that's not even his best technique? What if he has something that's even better, even scarier? Okay? To understand this most recent, most current way of Satan attacking people, I've written a story. It takes place in Book of Mormon times. It's a Nephite Lamanite story, fight war story. I've submitted it to the church to be published with the next Book of Mormon. They're rejecting me. It will be Alma 64 if you ever get that publication. Okay? In my story, the Lamanites have just finished attacking the Nephites, but they get their fannies kicked again. Anyone surprised? Okay. While they're retreating back to their camp a mile or two outside the city, they're whining and complaining, bandaging their wounds, and swearing oaths that they'll win next time, although they have no idea how. Any of you athletes ever go against someone who's enthusiastic but unskilled? Okay, it's a little annoying. I was a wrestler. We won't go into those stories. Okay. So, while they're out there in their camp, the Lamanites, one of the nerdy Lamanites, if you can imagine a nerdy Lamanite with his thick glasses, his pocket protector, and his loincloth hyped up to his rib cage. Everyone got that image in your head? Okay, something you want to get out of your head? Comes running up to his leader and says, hey, I just found this really cool plant. If we rub it in the water source of the Nephites, we could get them stoned. How cool would that be? Okay? Lamanite, or the captain Lamanite says, I don't even know what that means, but I don't have a better idea. So let's try it. So they find the stream of water that goes down to the Nephite city, and they start rubbing this plant in the water. Not too much. How come?
They'll notice. Obvious.
They'll notice it. We don't need them to notice it. So they do this for like 5 days. In the meantime, Captain Moroni's in the city with his men doing their push-ups and their sit-ups and running laps and chucking spears at each other, getting all hot and sweaty, drinking the water. 5 days go by and the Lamanites decide it's time to charge on the city. Here come the Lamanites. Charge! Captain Moroni sees them coming, turns to his men. Charge! Looks behind him and sees, let's do this, boss. Bring it on. Okay? Why are his men acting like that? They're stoned. Okay? So Captain Moroni does what he normally does and says, come on, guys, fight harder. Will that solve the problem?
No.
Come on, guys, concentrate. Fight smarter. Will that solve the problem?
No.
Sing a hymn?
No.
I've always tried to imagine a room full of guys smoking marijuana trying to sing hymns. That'd be kind of funny. Anyway. But do you notice anything familiar about these 3 solutions that are being proposed? How many times have you seen someone who deals with such issues and you start with, you need to fight harder, you need to concentrate and fight smarter, or you need to sing a hymn? That's all you got to do and you can beat this. All right? That can work with someone who's not an addict yet. But if a person reaches the level of addiction, then that's not going to be sufficient. It's not going to cover the problem. So why won't it work?
Needs sobriety.
They can't be stoned. If you're stoned, your brain's not going to work right. So this is where if I'm doing a one-on-one with somebody, I'll walk back with them and say, think back to the last time you had a lost battle. Now let's talk about a lost battle by definition for a second here. Because if you're here and you're thinking, I'm so glad I'm learning this for somebody else, I want you to look in your own history banks and find the last time you did something against your value system. The last time you promised yourself you would do something, but you didn't follow through on it. Or you promised yourself you wouldn't do something and you did it anyway. Our definition of a lost battle is any time you behave contrary to your value system. So if you want to make this presentation very interesting to you, I want you to take like 15 seconds. For some of you, it might take an hour to find a weakness. Okay? But take a second, and in the corner or the margin of your paper, if you're taking notes, or in the corner margin of your brain, think of something that you have not perfected yet, something that you really want to do but haven't been able to do. A common one is like exercise, practice an instrument, stop beating your children, something like that. And think about that and put it in the corner. If you think more about what your brain does wrong, you will have more empathy and compassion for those who also are not experiencing it. Because what we found out is that the pattern of the brain that leads towards these significant misbehaviors is the exact same pattern that your brain experiences when you fall to others. There's an extra amount of chemical elements associated with an addiction than what you're experiencing, but it's still the same steps, still the same pattern that I'll show you in just a minute. So think back to what that's like, what it's like just before you do something stupid. Your brain gets a little weird on you. You're not as close and focused. Alrighty. So